So welcome everybody. We're so glad that you've joined us today. My name is Charlotte and I'm a stager here at Haven. And today I'll be joined by my co-stager Lydia, who will speak here in a little bit. So today we're going to talk all about space refreshes. We really wanted to talk about this because it's something we can all think about right now and execute while we're staying safe at home. So whether you want to focus on one room or you have plans to refresh your whole home, we've got some really great tips for working with what you already have and some tips for inexpensive things that you can do that will make a huge impact on your space. So Lydia will talk about all of that in a bit, but before we jump into that part of things, we just wanted to talk first about design styles, because having a vision and style in mind is super important for any design project. As we'll talk about, you don't have to, and honestly really shouldn't, use just one style throughout your space. It's good to have 2 or 3 specific styles as the framework for your personal design style. So as we go through the different styles, try and pinpoint a couple that really grab you or catch your interest. And as always, if you have questions as we go along, feel free to type them in the chat. We'll be providing some of the links for some of the resources that we mentioned throughout, as well as a copy of the slideshow in an email after the session. So to start, we're going to go through some of the most common design styles. Now keep in mind that style is always changing, plus there are sub-styles of nearly every design aesthetic. So the list is never definitive, but these should really cover the basic styles that you'll likely use in any room refresh. So to start, let's talk about traditional design. Traditional is one of the oldest and most common design styles. The traditional style is rooted in 18th and 19th century decor, specifically European decor from that time. This style usually incorporates antiques, classic art and accessories, and usually uses symmetrical placement of furniture. The furniture is usually a little bit heavier with armchairs, button tufted pieces, and carved wood accents as the basic staples. So while this style can sometimes feel outdated, if balanced properly, it can actually feel really elegant and harmonious. Farmhouse. So next we have farmhouse style, which is also rooted a little bit in history, favoring simple, practical design over modern flash. Farmhouses traditionally were decorated with whatever was on hand and practical. So a lot of the times the items were kind of hardy and often hand-me-downs. This style can sometimes get a little kitsch when you're trying to mimic it. Think, too many rooster ceramics. But modern farmhouse can stay sophisticated and stylish with a thoughtful blend of old and new if you kind of go about it the right way. So an old harvest table can pair with your modern stainless steel kitchen appliances or modern light fixtures for a kitchen that is still rustic but feels really updated and refined. So industrial is next. Industrial style takes inspiration from the look of warehouses, factories, and other industrial structures. Denise, do we have the industrial slide? Awesome, thanks. So as you can see, definitely echoing those warehouses and kind of the starker, streamlined look. So you typically think exposed brick, metals, and reclaimed wood when you think of this style, which sometimes can feel a little bit harsh and more masculine, but a neutral color palette, an occasional pop of art, maybe like a really colorful piece of art, distressed leather, and 1 or 2 vintage accessories can really help to soften this look. Scandinavian is next. For this design style, think white walls, wood floors, modern furniture, and kind of like a lack of clutter throughout for this style. Beyond furniture from IKEA, this Nordic design aesthetic really prizes simplicity and functionality, but it doesn't need to feel cold. This style can definitely use wood tones, plants, and faux fur or chunky knit textures to bring warmth and coziness to the space. People who really love this style feel that the uncluttered nature and kind of brightness of it all brings them a sense of calm when they return home at the end of a day. Transitional is next. So transitional style is modern and clean and is really all about layering neutral textiles and textures. The furniture shapes are really clean and classic, nothing too chunky and ornamental, but also not overly sleek and bare. So this style is actually what we use a lot as a jumping off point for our staging here at Haven. It's really neutral and inviting, so it appeals to the widest range of buyers for us with our staging. Plus, this style can complement any type of home and is great to blend with other design styles. So we definitely tend to favor this style as kind of our baseline for our staging. So coastal here is next. This style is super casual and beachy. It's all about bringing the natural elements of the coast into the home. So you've got like blue tones to mimic the ocean, whitewashed woods nod to the sand and the sun, and then natural materials like linen, rattan, and seagrass bring the beachy dunes inside. So similar to the farmhouse style, it's easy to go a little bit too kitsch with this style by throwing in a bunch of like anchors or coral. But if you focus less on that literal nautical decor and more on layering in the natural materials, this look can be super sophisticated and nice and relaxed. So mid-century modern is next here. Call it the Mad Men effect or influence. Mid-century modern has been everywhere for years now. The style is 50s and 60s influenced with clean lines, simplicity, and practicality of design. Warm wood is a big key component, like you can see in these rooms here, but also materials like acrylic and formica. Think browns and oranges for an earthy but vibrant color palette, and then layering in geometric prints and retro wallpapers. If you use in small and purposeful doses, it can really bring some playfulness to your mid-century modern space. Boho is next here. So as you can see, this style is really eccentric, worldly, and playful. Boho is inspired by travel and combining objects, colors, and patterns from all over the world. There are really no rules for mixing colors and textures in this look. So the look is just tons and tons of layers that might not conventionally go together. It's the opposite of minimal and modern, and more is definitely more in this style. But you can create a really nice visual resting place for the eye by using white strategically. A white wall is really the perfect backdrop for these rich tones and patterns. Eclectic is next. So this style is really similar to boho, as you can see, but it's a bit more refined. So the colorful and collected nature is still there, but it's not quite as layered and eccentric. The rooms are more styled and curated, and just using one or two bright pieces kind of lend a more sophisticated look to this style, and everything is styled with just a bit more purpose. Modern is next here. So on the exact opposite end of the spectrum from boho and eclectic, you have modern. There's really nothing showy or embellished about this style at all. It's all about clean shapes and forms. This style can sometimes come across as like a little bit cold or sterile, but it doesn't have to be all chrome and glass and hard edges. Neutral textures can help bring a little warmth to the stark design. and curves like you see in that staircase there can kind of soften the look a little bit. And finally, we have glam. So this style has a high-end look with tons of jewel tones and a lot of luxe textiles like velvet and leather. Brass is also a great complement to those colors and textiles, so you tend to see a lot of brass in this look, like you see in these examples. It's a little bit of like a Hollywood Regency look, but pared down a bit more for a posh and elevated feel. So that really wraps up our overview of the most common design styles. Does anyone have any questions about any of those right now or need clarification on any of these styles? Again, we'll send a copy of these slides to everyone after the session, but feel free to shout out or type into chat if you have any questions about a specific style right now.
Doesn't look like there's any questions right now, Charlotte.
Awesome. Some of you may already have a pretty good idea what your personal design style is, but some of you may need a little help exploring further to figure it out. So we actually sourced some quizzes that can help you determine your design style. And after the session, we'll send these quizzes in the follow-up email as well, along with some additional resources that we'll talk about to help with your space refresh. So I had this question when I was taking the quizzes. What if you take these quizzes and get a different result from one to the next? Or even in going through the styles here that you see on the screen, you feel torn between a few different styles. Chances are you will get a mix of results. I personally bounced kind of between mid-century modern and eclectic a little bit. And that's okay, because design isn't a science. The quizzes and style roundups are really created just to nudge you in the direction of a style or point out some of your gut instinct likes and dislikes. The lines between certain styles definitely tend to blend, as you can probably already tell. Plus, chances are you'll be looking to blend a couple of your favorite styles for your room refresh anyway. So maybe you'll use the Scandinavian sensibility as the base for your room refresh, decluttering and adding more plants to the room. But you might have a glam emerald green velvet chair that you want to keep in the room. That's totally okay. You don't want your space to look like a catalog anyway, so you can absolutely cherry pick the things you like the most from 2 or 3 of these styles and merge them together. Go with your gut on a lot of this. But having the Scandinavian filter as the backbone of your room will definitely help keep you and the room more focused. So it's good to kind of try and narrow down to at least a few if you can. And I'll touch more on combining different styles in a second here. So outside of taking a quiz, here are a few more ways to hone in on your unique design style. So Pinterest is a really great resource. Our advice is to pin a lot and then look through what you've pinned and see if there's a common thread or if there are common traits to the spaces. So maybe you're continually drawn to wood furniture, or maybe you have a color scheme with green in several pins. Maybe you keep pinning images of accent walls. Really try and figure out what links all of your pins together and use that to make a plan for your space. And second, look to your Instagram and any design blogs or magazines you follow. Similar to the Pinterest pins you favor, chances are you gravitate to a certain look and follow certain designers or influencers, with a common design thread. So go back through some of your favorite posts or some of your favorite articles that really grabbed you and see if there's a common link there. And then you can also just look at the bones of your home for inspiration. Maybe you want to lean into the vintage charm of your space and highlight it, but you can also choose to move in the opposite direction. So like if you live in a glass and concrete high-rise unit, there's really nothing saying you have to use glass and chrome modern pieces throughout the space if that's not really your vibe. Focus on what you really love about your space, but also the things that you aren't so crazy about. That can help you narrow down your design likes and dislikes. And finally, I know I'm really looking forward to all my walks outside during this time. And I've really come to appreciate how diverse the homes in my neighborhood look. So we have this like great Scandinavian box style house that I keep finding myself walking past, but also an amazing old Victorian style house with this like crazy elaborate turret that I love. So at the end of the day, we're just really lucky here in Chicago to have such a mix of architecture and design. So really try and embrace that and look around next time you take a walk and maybe just make a note of what really grabs you. So like I mentioned, sometimes you kind of fall into two design styles that you really love, but maybe they seem to oppose or be in conflict with each other. This is also okay. My advice would be to choose the dominant style that you want to be the focus of the room. And then the second or third styles can just be accents to the dominant. So once you have the dominant style figured out, find similarities in the two or three that you can focus on to tie them all together. So similarities in colors, wood tones, lines, and scale will all help to unify the look and pull it all together. Maybe you like the blues and whites of the coastal style, but you don't want your space to feel as preppy as that design aesthetic. So what you could do is to use the coastal colors, but bring in your other love, say the glam style, through accessories and textures, like you can see here in these examples, using brass, glass, and faux fur can really help to glam up the space while still retaining the coastal kind of vibe. So maybe you would use a blue velvet pillow instead of a blue linen, or choose a natural shag rug instead of a jute, or bring in a brass drum side table instead of a rattan drum side table. That way the color story is the common thread and you keep the integrity of that, but the shapes still feel unified, but you're adding in that secondary style. So same thing goes for multiple rooms within the same space. The easiest way to create harmony, especially when you're merging 2 to 3 different interior design styles, is really to use similar colors throughout every room. So for continuity, we recommend that you stick to no more than 3 different colors for your overall color scheme. And then you can use shades of those colors to create sort of a layered palette. So using the example from before, if your style is coastal glam, you've got blue and white as 2 of your colors, but maybe you want to use that emerald green velvet chair again to add your glam. That's totally fine. That's then your third color. So embrace it and bring in different shades of plants and greenery to some of your rooms, and maybe throw in a green velvet pillow to another room just to tie it all in. And then finally, before I hand it over to Lydia and talk about room refreshes, I just saw this graphic the other day and thought it was so interesting. So Angie's List sorted through all of the top design hashtags on Instagram and tracked each hashtag's location data state by state. And I thought it was really interesting what the 3 most popular styles ended up being, and also kind of the different states that gravitate toward them. So see if there are any surprises for you at all in this too. The research does show that coastal living is the top interior decor hashtag used in 18 states, so that's huge. Unsurprisingly, most of those 18 are coastal states and mostly on the East Coast, so that made sense to me. The second most popular hashtag is mid-century modern, with West Coast Instagram users favoring this style. And then finally, rustic decor rounds out the top 3, with a lot of the mountain states and some of these sort of Midwest bordering on Northeast states favoring this farmhouse kind of style. So I was personally a little surprised that North Dakota was the only state to favor boho decor, and that Oregon broke the West Coast mid-century streak and tends to favor coastal style. So see if anything else jumped out at you, or if you fit in with your state's preference. I thought that was kind of fun. So that's the first part of this topic, and hopefully that helped clarify the different design styles and maybe even opened your eyes to a new style or two. And now that you have the style foundation in place, I am going to turn it over to Lydia, who is also a stager here at Haven. And Lydia is going to talk about how to put all of that into practice and give yourself a nice room refresh.
Thanks, Charlotte. I love looking at that graphic. I think it's really interesting.
Some surprises, right?
Yeah, I really thought Boho would be on there a couple more times, but
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about refreshing your space using some of the design styles we talked about. And it's obviously not always possible to totally start from scratch in a room with blank everything, no furniture, all that. So first we're going to talk about stuff you can do to make a big impact in a small way for a small investment in your room. So first we're going to talk about using no cost at all. So if you want to revamp your space and you literally have no budget to buy anything new, you can kind of reset your room. So think about being a stager for a day, kind of step into our shoes, assess the room as if you're putting your house on the market. So the very first thing we always do as stagers is we tell clients to get rid of any personal items in a room. So taking it off of your like family photos, putting away your little personal knickknacks, candles, things like that. Just get it to the bare bones of what the design is. And then let it sit like that for like an hour, a day, go do something else, come back to it. It's really helpful to just walk away from it for a little while and come back with fresh eyes so that you can see it in a different way. Once you have that, you can slowly layer your stuff back in, but really be thoughtful about how you're placing everything. So maybe this will trigger you to move one of your vases that you always kept on your coffee table to a bookshelf instead, or to another room completely. Maybe you have items in a different room that you want to bring into this space instead. Or maybe you realize, I know I'm guilty of this one. I probably don't need 5 or 6 blankets in the same room. Like maybe I can spread these out somewhere and use them somewhere else, or be really selective about which ones I have on display. So doing this just kind of helps you really be thoughtful about what you're putting and where you're putting it. Also, just think about one of your favorite design styles, like the ones we talked about, and try to look at the room through the filter of that style. So you don't need to buy all new furniture and all new accessories to try out a new style. You can just start small with things you already have. So think about if you really like the Scandinavian look. The first big thing you can just do is declutter, because that's part of the design style. And then neutrals are king in Scandinavian design. So collecting your things that are all black and white and trying to organize them and display them together so that they become the focus of the room can help bring that Scandinavian aspect to your room. You can also think about, if you want to add a little more farmhouse to your design, getting some fresh flowers from the market and putting them in a mason jar with a ribbon around them is very farmhouse and is like an instant way to try that design out in your space. Another way you can switch up your accessories is to look at the books and magazines you have and try to place them strategically. So switching up where you put them, or using hardcover books that are all a certain color on the binding or a combination of colors can help add a pop to a side table or to a coffee table. And if you don't have a coffee table book, you can use magazines too. You think about magazines that have all the same color binding, or if you have like a specific one that you really love the cover of, make that kind of a focal point. You can do that as well. Also think about your textiles. So switching pillows from one room to another room can create a different color palette and change the mood of your room. So if you look at your different pillow combinations as well, that can help. So sometimes we get into a routine of, we're cleaning up and then this pillow goes in this spot, this pillow goes in this spot. So if you kind of force yourself to take all of your decor pillows, put them in a big pile and force yourself to put them in a new combination, that can really transform your space as well without you even having to purchase new ones. I know, for example, I'm moving to a new house soon and I want to switch up the pillows on my sofa to kind of bring some newness to the space. So the pillows I have there currently are going to go into a bedroom, I think, and then I want to try to bring out some other ones that I actually had in storage for a while and see what they do in the space. Seeing the room through fresh eyes is really the most important part. So being able to declutter and take the personal items out and like look at it through a filter is kind of what helps you focus. And then if you're looking to do like a more substantial refresh and you do have a little bit of a budget to invest in some new things, there are definitely some things you can do that really change the room in big ways. So first we're going to talk about new paint. So this is probably a pretty obvious one that a lot of people think of when they're thinking about room refreshes, because it definitely changes the room very dramatically, but it's a lot less expensive than buying all new furniture. It just takes a little bit of effort, obviously. So on the left, you can see that just painting that living room white transformed the room from pretty traditional to more Scandinavian. And obviously the furniture and the light fixture make a difference too, but painting everything white can be a big step toward a clean and bright refresh. On the right, you can see that even without furniture, repainting the walls, baseboards, window frames make a big difference. The old walls looked a little more dated and traditional, while the new look could be a perfect springboard for a coastal refresh. So just a couple quick things about choosing paint colors, which again, I am moving to a new house, so I had to just do this, and I learned some things that you should know. So if you're painting over a dark wall, even if it's not super dark, but it's not white, definitely put primer on the wall before you put up your paint samples. If you think about taking a marker and drawing on a piece of white paper, you know what color that marker is instantly. If you take the same marker and you draw on a piece of construction paper that's like a green or yellow or whatever, the color is going to look a lot different. The same is true if you're painting a room. If you have a dark color underneath, that color is not going to read the same way as it will on top of primer. And primer is almost always required when you're painting a room, so it's really good to have it up there so you know what the color is really going to look like. Next thing is you definitely want to put up large samples of paint. If you make it too small, then your eye doesn't really focus on the paint color itself. It focuses more on the paint around that color, and so you might make a decision based on how it's interacting with the color that's already there rather than the color itself. So definitely give yourself a large area. Also make sure you put it in different spots in the room, just because you don't have windows on every side and light comes in all different ways. So you want to be able to see it in different shadows and different lights, and definitely leave it there for a couple of days so that you can see it in different times of the day and with your lights on and off, because you really want to make sure you pick a color that you like all day long, not just part of the day. And then lastly, don't forget about your trim. It seems like a really small thing, but definitely once you put the paint on the walls, you're going to realize whether your trim works with it or not, or if it's just kind of like it needs a fresh coat of paint. If you want the trim to kind of blend in, you can definitely paint it the exact same color as the walls. You just kind of up the sheen level. So maybe you put an eggshell finish on the walls, you can do a semi-gloss or a high gloss on the trim. And then you can also, of course, paint it a contrasting color instead, a darker color or a lighter color based on the walls that you picked. But that really helps complete the room and give the whole thing a nice impact. Next thing you can do is swap out your textiles. So we talked about this in terms of just swapping one room for another or rearranging, but you can also just refresh textiles by purchasing new pillow covers or blankets. And this is a really great way to just bring color into the room without having to repaint. So really great for renting as well. On the top left, you can see how the pillows transform that traditional sofa into more of an eclectic style. And then on the bottom right, you can see that the same sofa is set up, but those textiles take the room in more of a coastal or even a farmhouse direction. I will say this can definitely be really tricky to do when you're ordering pillows online. And as we all are right now, ordering online is kind of what we have to do. So I would just say that if you're unsure, try to purchase from somewhere that has a good return policy and just get a few extra, play around with them, and send back what doesn't work. The other thing that you can do is swap out accessories. So this can be really daunting because there are millions of accessories out there at all different price points, all different sizes, shapes, colors. So this is really where knowing what design style you're trying to achieve is helpful, because you can literally just search, the design name plus accessories. So mid-century accessories, Scandinavian accessories, all that. And that helps just narrow it down right away. A lot of a lot of companies, a lot of search engines already have it all sorted for you, so it can be an easy way to find them. So for example, on the screen here, Bobby Burke, who's the designer from Queer Eye, put together a big list of mid-century accessories that makes it just a lot easier to find things that fit the style you're going for. If you're having trouble finding those kinds of things, you can also just think about the main features of the style you're trying to achieve. So things like, what are the similar colors among everything? What are the shapes? Are you going for more like geometric or more organic? Things like that can be helpful. And then finally, getting a new rug. This is probably a bigger one.
Lydia, sorry. Just wanted to interrupt with a question from Kristen on
Yeah.
accessories. She was wondering, like, if you have a collection, is it best to keep that to one room accessory-wise or spread it throughout?
Ooh, that's fun.
Yeah.
I don't know what the collection is of, but I guess I would say it depends on what you're going for overall. So if you really want your room to fit a specific design style, then I would say take that collection of yours and pick out the things from the collection that fit that design style and find a way to display those in the room. If you want them all to be there in the same space, then think about how you can blend the things that aren't fitting with the design style into the rest. Because like we said, you don't have to fit just one design style in a room, so it's really easy to blend with other things. And then, you know, again, you can have a big impact by having a whole collection in one space, but it also could be kind of fun to split them up and kind of have a little bits of the collection everywhere you look in the room. So I would say there's no really like wrong answer for that. It's just kind of playing around, putting it in different spaces and seeing what you think. I don't know if Charlotte would add anything to that or not.
No, I think you covered it. Yeah, I think, maybe look at like how you can display them differently. So maybe 2, 3 on the coffee table, but then a couple on a bookshelf. Intersperse some plants or succulents to kind of give it some variety of texture and color, a variety of height. You can put a couple on a book or two to raise some up in height. But yeah, like Lydia said, just play with it. Yeah, there's really no wrong answer, I think.
Yeah, I mean, even when we go and stage homes, we usually bring a collection of items, I guess, and then we kind of rearrange them as we are in the space, because you can plan it out in your head, but then it might be different when you're actually moving it around in reality. But that's the fun part, is kind of moving stuff around and seeing what you really like. Were there any questions before I continue?
That was it in the chat.
Oh. All right, so the other thing you can do is getting a new rug. So this is definitely a good way and a quick way to bring in new colors and textures and style into the room. So this slide that you're looking at is a really great visual of not only how much a rug can change a room, but how everything we just talked about can work together to change the room. So the rug alone would be a dramatic change to the space. The right-hand rug is a really impactful way to get a more boho vibe. But when you're going the extra mile and changing the pillows and accessories as well, it just maximizes that refresh, so you have a whole different look. Definitely play with all of these ideas and see what works for you, that for your budget as well. I think no matter what, the 2 most important things to keep in mind when you're revamping a space is that you do not have to get it done in one go, and to trust your gut. The best design spaces often are evolving, and are more added to and curated over time. You can achieve like a curated look more quickly by just making sure you're varying where you're getting your items. So maybe some stuff is more antiqued, some stuff is bought new or repurposed, but that kind of avoids having it make it look too matchy-matchy. And it's also okay for your sense of style to evolve over time as well. And you can kind of continually blend that new style throughout. I know I used to be a lot more into the modern farmhouse, and then after living in Chicago for so long, I think I got more, what's the word? Inspired, I guess, by all the urban surroundings I have. So my look has evolved to a lot more modern. And so blending my kind of older farmhouse with my new modern has been kind of an adventure, and it's been fun, and that's okay to do. Odds are, too, what you are naturally drawn to will end up coordinating together, because it's kind of rare for somebody to be super drawn to something that's totally glam, like all over the place, and then also really drawn to like just only black and white. So, feel free to just try some stuff first and see what happens. That's the fun part. So those are my tips for revamping a space, and I'll pass it back to Charlotte.
Awesome. Thanks, Lydia. So I've already tackled a refresh on my living room, and now I definitely can't wait to tackle the rest of my space. Those are some really good tips. So that wraps up everything for today on our end. We'll be sending that follow-up email with those resources we mentioned and a copy of the slides we used here today. So we again wanted to thank everyone for joining us. Next week, we have our creative director, Brad Pierce, discussing artwork. So he'll go over the basics of selecting new artwork for your space. And he's actually going to be joined by a special guest, Mary Stonachek from Left Bank Art. Left Bank Art is a local art wholesaler that we really love to work with here at Haven. And so we're really excited to hear what Mary has to say about selecting artwork and any artwork trends that she's seeing right now. So definitely please join us next week for that session. And thanks again to everyone for logging on today. Have a good afternoon. Try and enjoy the nice weather, it looks like.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.